I went from this to this, only having played City Skylines 2 for 50 hours. So today I'm going to share with you my tips and tricks, and hopefully that will help inspire your next build and help you build something brilliant. First we need to do is go in and buy the tiles when we've selected our little island that we want to develop. Next thing to do is go in and lay out our road network. So I'm imagining that it's going to run through the middle, our main road, and from this we'll then develop everything else off the sides. The plan is to put a little roundabout in here, and then from this roundabout I'll connect it up to the highway using single lane one-way lanes. So I need to make sure I connect this up both ways so that we have an on-ramp and off-ramp for both the road going to the left and the road running from the right. So once we've grabbed our road, I need to make sure I connect this up to both sides, both the highway going to the left and the highway running to the right, making sure we've got an on and off ramp for each direction. And I'll put a small curve on these to try and get it nice and smooth so cars aren't having to turn too sharply. And I think it's quite a good skill to do this on your own and not rely on the intersections, because this is something you might have to do at the start, and it gets you used to using all the road tools and being able to build your own highway intersections. So you can see here the highway is slightly elevated, so the plan is to run our highway underneath the bridge, and you just need to mess around with the elevation tools and get the right height required to duck underneath. And what I would say is don't be afraid just to get your roads in to begin with. After that you can delete them if you're not happy with it and redo it. So don't be afraid just to get it in and make mistakes, because you'll learn pretty quick from these mistakes and develop your own style as you go through. Yeah, and what I'm doing here is just making sure that I use my advanced road tools to make sure cars can't go just directly turn straight up that ramp from the other ramp, and make sure they go round the roundabout, just so there's no sharp turns, no cars cutting in, which could cause accidents or could cause cars to back up and create traffic. So making them run all the way around the roundabout is a great idea. And what I'm doing here is just upgrading the highways where I've connected my on and off ramps to. This just gives cars a slip road, so I think that's a nice realistic thing to do and doesn't back the traffic up either. So if you take off the snap to grid and the other toggle tools, it means you can move your highway around and get it perfectly straight, get everything in line so it doesn't look messy. Right, so that's done. That looks decent. I can always go in and straighten those up a little bit later on if I need to. Next thing I'm going to do is get all this grid laid out. And the plan is to have a few main roads coming off of our main high street, where we're going to have all our mixed commercial and some medium density buildings in the middle. And then we're going to have alleyways for the rest and for our low density buildings around the outskirts of the island. So we're going to run this one almost up to the edge, and we'll probably do the same the other side as well in a minute, just making sure I line everything up to 90 degrees, get it perfectly straight, nice clean lines, and it gives us a lot more room and gives us many more zoning blocks when we want to put in our zones later on. We'll run this one right down the back as well, and I decided here to put a roundabout on the end. I think it just gives it a cleaner finish rather than having a one lane join up to an alleyway. It does give us a nicer look, and I really like using this advanced road tool. It gives you nice clean curved lines that look really nice, especially if you're building like a suburban area or you're building a small low density community. It can look really natural, getting all those smooth curved lines in. At the bottom here we're putting in some straight roads. The plan is to make this our office area, so we're making sure that all our roads are nice and straight. We might even have some closes, or what we're imagining are closes at the bottom, to give it that sort of a feel of a little business district. This is hopefully going to give our citizens on the island a few more opportunities to work, especially those that are a little bit more educated. This can provide a great opportunity for them to have work that fits their needs. I think it's quite nice, especially if you want to add your own touch to it as well. If you have some curved roads in your road network too. Because having just a grid, a monotonous grid, can look really boring. So putting some curves in there can give it a nice natural feel and could just make it a little bit more exciting when you go in, put all your zones in and build and put your island together. So that's my road network finished. I'm really happy with that. I think that looks great. It's going to give us a good starting position to get all our zoning in now. So first we're going to do is get our office zoning done. I like to go ahead and select the marquee tool and manually draw and put all the zoning in myself. This allows me to put little gaps between the buildings so it's not too clunky. We don't get one building on top of the other. It also gives us a little bit of room in between for both some paths so our citizens can walk around, but also for trees and any other detailing that I might want. And especially with a nice little island build like this, I don't want everything clunked together. The idea is just a small little island that looks quite cute and has a more spacious feel to it, should we say. So what I've had to do, and this is something I've learned and seen others do, is you might need to force some of the zoning to certain roads. Otherwise it either won't build or you won't get your building built on the road that you want. So if you use the footpath for this one and put the roads in between where you don't want it and where you do want it, and this should force it to one side. We're going to add some parking into our office area as well, so people travelling for work have somewhere to park. I think the parking's great, especially when you've got roads like alleys, or you've maybe put some detailing on your high streets like a grass verge or trees, because people have nowhere to park. And this can be a great revenue source for your city and something that is really good not to forget to do, and something I would really encourage you to do early is to get in your vegetation, especially your trees, because this can take a long time to grow. So get this in before you do anything else. At least then, as it's developing and as you're building, the trees will start to grow, and before you know it, you have a nicely flourished city with really well-grown vegetation. So let's get in some of our zoning now. We're going to have some high density on this corner here, and we're going to plan to keep it no deeper than 3 blocks for our zoning, so no longer than 3 deep. This is going to mean that we hopefully don't get massive skyscrapers and that we have slightly bigger buildings on our main road. And then down the rest here, as you can see, we're going to have lines of mixed commercial. Again, these buildings are quite tall, not as tall as your high density buildings, but in comparison to some of our medium densities. And we won't forget to put in some schools, and I'm going to put this out round the back. And as you can see, the whole island has green roads, so that tells us it's easily accessible for everyone on that island. Yeah, I think that looks nice there, nestled amongst the trees. I think that looks brilliant. So we've got in our main buildings along the high street, and along the back, along our other main roads, we're going to have our medium density buildings as well. And I'm spreading these out a little bit here, just so that we can put paths along the back. This is going to allow our citizens to walk around really easily, and the more we can encourage them to walk or even take public transport, the less they're going to drive, so it's going to create less traffic on the roads. This is something I would encourage everyone to do. And like I talked about with our tree verge and our grass verge, I'm going to go in and put that along this whole main road so that people can't park along this high street. And I think it gives our main high street a nicer look, especially with all the mixed commercial buildings we're going to have. So if people are walking down the high street for shopping, I think it's going to be a much nicer look than walking down and we've got a whole row of parked cars. That's not an attractive look. And if we provide enough parking and people can walk to the high street, then that's going to be much better for our island going forward. And what I would suggest, maybe even before getting your zoning in, is to lay out your paths. I think that's a really good idea to do beforehand, just so you know where you want people to walk and where you would like them to go, and then you can put your zoning in and around that, and it will help you shape exactly how you want your city to look as well. And you can make sure that you've got all your main areas connected up with paths before you've got your nice buildings in or your nice zoning in and you don't want to change it. Right, so here I really don't like that this road is a different size to the other road. It's making everything unsymmetrical. So I'm going to go in and upgrade it and then reconfigure the zoning so it's all symmetrical. I think it will look nicer when it's all built and all comes in a little bit later on. Along the edges of our high streets, we're going to make sure we put some commercial buildings in. This will supply enough jobs and give people to work and people places to shop as well, especially those local ones. Maybe a small convenience store or somewhere to go at lunchtime would be perfect. You might not want to go to your big high street mixed commercial building in the middle of the day. We are going to make our office area a little bit bigger and expand it out. We have plenty of demand, so we can use that. The idea is we're going to use this whole south of the island for office areas and give people plenty of places to work. Although it looks a bit messy with all the paths there at the moment, when the buildings come in later, I will go in and delete these roads. And that should mean it's fixed. When it's built, it's fixed to the road that you've done it. It shouldn't change after that. And using our advanced road tool, we can go in and take these crossings out that we don't want in by right-clicking on the areas that we don't want, because this could, especially near our main high street, this could stop our traffic and slow it down. Especially if we want to keep the traffic flowing, it's going to be a good idea to take these out. And what I've found sometimes, especially if it doesn't work the tool, you can delete the road and build it again, and just make sure you don't go too far that it creates the crossing, and then you should be okay. We're going to get in our row housing now. Again, we're going to keep these to 3 deep. And when I put my row housing in, I do like to, and I think this is quite a nice thing to do, is put some little gaps. Maybe have 4 or 5 row houses and then a gap, 4 or 5 row houses and then a gap. In the UK, that's something we have. We have 3 or 4 houses that are connected together, that are all attached, and then the end ones are semi-detached. And again, that can look realistic if that's something that you'd like to do. Maybe some of your style. This is something you have to play around with a little bit and see what works for you and what you want your city to look like. Yeah, so let me know what you think when they come in later on. Let me know what you think. Tell me if that's something you like to do, or you just like to have lots all in a row. Yeah, so we mustn't forget we've got elementary school. We also need to put in both our police and our medical centre. And I have planned here to keep my medical centre out in the open. I will put some vegetation around that a little bit later on. But I think having it on its own there is quite nice, and that's something you would quite often see for sort of an older person's home or a medical centre, is that they will have some land around it. So we will be running some paths along around the back of that a little bit later on. Almost imagine it's giving people somewhere to walk when they're visiting family and friends. So next up, we're going to get in our low density buildings. Again, we're going to keep these quite small and manually marquee these up myself, looking to leave little gaps between each one. This gives me room for our paths later on, and we can put trees between the houses. I think that's a really nice thing to do because it adds a little bit of separation. And this is what you typically see in more wealthy areas. You'd have those trees providing space and gap between to make it feel like your house is detached from everyone else's. If you just have all the houses clunked together, I don't think that looks very great and won't encourage those wealthy people to come and live on your island. With this little gap here, that's quite awkward to have some housing on. I'm planning to put a recreational ground, and we're going to have some tennis courts in this area. I will be putting a little road leading into it, and I think that can create the area of almost like they're driving in, they're going to park up, and then they're going to use the facilities. I find it's quite difficult to have our recreational grounds on curved roads. This can be quite awkward, and it can have a little bit of separation between our recreational ground and the roads. So now I've got those tennis courts in, I'm going to go around and make a start on putting our paths around the outside of the island and trying to connect things up, giving a place for people to walk. I think that can be quite a nice scenic walk, especially if you live in one of the houses nearby. It can be great views to walk along the edge of the island if you've got a nice footpath to do it. This is again another one of those times where I like to use the curve tool to give us nice smooth path lines that can run all the way around the outside and look super clean when it's all finished. And if you want to take your City Skylines 2 building up to the next level and add your own style and your own touch to all your builds, it's the detailing, I think, that can really make a big difference. So what I like to do, especially on all these small recreational grounds, is go in and put some trees. I quite like the pine tree around the outsides and have a row of them. I think that can give you quite a nice finish. And a cool little trick you can do here, if you don't like all your trees facing in the same direction, you want to be really precise, I would hold down the right mouse button as you're dragging across to place your trees. This will naturally rotate them and will give you a different finish every time you plant a tree in. So give that a try. Let me know what you think. It can be a much nicer finish. And if you want to get really finicky, I quite like putting in some little bushes all the way around the outside. I think especially with tennis courts, this is something you'll quite often see. So they've got a bit more privacy and they can play without getting disturbed from others that are maybe in the local park or in the area. So here I'm just going in and putting these round nice and quick. I'm not being too precise with this one. I'm going to keep it simple because it all depends on how much time you have. If you want to spend lots of time putting it in, then yeah, great, go for it. Get them all nicely aligned, nicely tightly packed together. If not, just get them in, and you can always touch it up later if you want to as well, if you think it does look a bit scruffy. And if you've done an island build that connects off of a motorway or a highway, what you'll often find is that these highways don't have your underwater pipes. So make sure you put your underwater pipes connecting to somewhere else or another road that you've already built. I mean, if you don't, it'll be quite obvious you don't, because you'll have big red markers when you press play and when your buildings start to pop up, because people will be instantly unhappy. A lot of your residents on City Skylines will quite often have dogs, and I think the dog park is a nice addition to the game, and you'll often see people walking down the high street with their dogs, often sometimes a stray dog, but it's quite a nice addition to your build and can keep your people very, very happy. And don't forget to connect up your power lines as well. With both our power lines, this is something that can be done underground and can keep our city looking nice and tidy, so we don't get these cables running everywhere and looking messy. And now we've done that, let's press play and see how our little island develops. And what I will do is go around and fill in any of these little gaps that we've got remaining and zone up the little areas that we haven't done so already. And the good thing with pressing play or leaving it running while you're developing your city is it gives us a chance for our bigger buildings to develop and the demand for those to come in as things start to grow. Nearly forgot to put in my police department there. I think it's good to have these just off the main road because it doesn't cause traffic, as you can see here, when the police cars come out. But it also means they can easily access the whole island and the more densely populated areas as well. And we will go in and put some details around this police department as well. This will fill out any of the gaps around the sides, so we've not just got aimlessly open green areas that look a bit boring and a bit nothingy. So sometimes just a row of trees around the outside can really improve the look of all your buildings and your open areas. There you go. Looks so much better when it's finished. It's good to see that some of our commercial and some of our bigger buildings, including our mixed commercial, are starting to come in. We will finish up zoning the rest of our low density buildings. We've got plenty of demand for these, so I'm not worried about them coming in quick. I always find I have lots of demand for the low density. It's the demand for your medium and higher density buildings, which is a little bit harder to get because it requires your citizens to be a little bit happier. You need to provide them a little bit more in terms of recreation and well-being. And it's important not to forget, even on a little island like this, to put in our little taxi stops. And what you'll find is on the main roads you can put your bus shelters, but on your alleyways you can't. You have to have taxi stops. And what you'll see is if you put your taxi shelters on your main road where you've got a grass verge, it will actually delete the grass verge and take that away. You can replace this with an extended sidewalk, but what I'm going to do is put the taxi stop on another street off of our main street so we don't remove that grass verge and don't ruin how it looks. So as you can see, it's all really starting to take shape. Now I've got all my low density in and all my pathways around the outside. That's starting to look really, really nice. Now all our medium buildings have come in. We've got a lot of our paths and low density buildings in. And it's really starting to take shape. And you can see how I'm going to have my bigger buildings running along these two main roads. We're just waiting for our bigger buildings on this crossroads to come in now. So our row houses have started coming in. And you can see that some of them don't take up the whole of the zoning block that we wanted to. So I just delete them and wait until they're the 3 squares that we asked for in the first place. And they'll often be the right size when you want them to be. And this is another time where I need to force the zoning because I want all my houses running along this alleyway here, not along the main road. So if I just put paths all the way down the side there, then we can zone all the way across and keep everything symmetrical and running in line with each other. So you can see how nice our row houses look, all symmetrical, 4 in a block. Yeah, they look really nice like that. And if you want to, I mean I haven't, but you can put little paths or trees between to add to your look. And when you're up to level 4, you can start to build your districts. I'm already at level 6, so I can put this in all the way around the outside of the island. And I just go all the way around the edge. It just means that anything we build, or if we do continue to develop this or add something else going forwards, then it's all going to be in our district. Especially with a small island like this, it's quite nice to just have the whole thing as one district rather than separate it. I mean, you could have your business district as a separate one, but I like to have the whole thing included in one district area. It allows us to also put in some policies a little bit later on and also check how our employment figures are looking and how our island's growing both in terms of population and in happiness too. And it's come up with a random name of Fairview Corner. You can see here that having that taxi shelter in has removed our grass verge. So if I move it down to the next street where we have no grass verge, you can see that it's put our grass verge back in again, and that hopefully has made it look nice down that main road again. And I quite like to have some of my shelters and my main stops, both buses and taxis, outside our main recreational grounds. So if tourists want to visit certain areas, then brilliant, they can. It's easily accessible for them. They don't have to walk so far. So again, if you find that some of your zoning you put in don't develop even when you've got demand, that's quite often because our zoning has been put to the side road here on the right rather than to the road we wanted in front. So you're going to have to get your path and put it along the side. That will automatically assign that block of zoning to the road that you want, and you can then continue to zone up, and it should hopefully come in straight away like it's done here. You can see some of the policies that we can enact, and I quite like the saving energy one. I think nothing lost by putting that on. I think that's a great one. With the recycling, I think it's good to have a recycling centre before you do that, but you also have to remember it takes up your people's time, so be careful when you put that on. And this Fairview Corner doesn't look much like a corner, so we are going to change the name and come up with something a little bit different that's a little bit more fitting. So we're going to make up just a random name on the spot, and we're going to call it Hardwood Downs. No idea where I've got that from, but I think that's better than Fairview Corner. So I'm going to continue to add some more recreational areas in. I feel like our far end of our island doesn't have much to offer at the moment, so I'm going to put a few more in that fit, maybe some little gaps or awkward little zoning that I have, and then put some zoning around the outside. And again, with these small little playground areas that I've put here, it's excellent to put some detailing around the outside. It can really spruce it up and highlight the area almost a little bit more. And this is where we have our little gaps between our low density buildings, and where I like to put in a few trees just between each house to add that little bit of a buffer and make it feel like people have more spacious and quiet places to live. There we go. So that's the island finished. You can see our low density row house in there. I think that looks quite nice in little chunks, and you can really see you've got that cross shape on our main high street for all our bigger buildings, and I think that looks brilliant. And you can see how spacious that looks. Yeah, so it's good when you finish to go through and just check that you've put everything in that you intended to put in, and that all your citizens are happy, and that both your police and medical departments are covering your whole island and not leaving any gaps. And I almost forgot, so it's a good job I went through this, I almost forgot to put in a telecom mast. This just ensures that all your citizens have access to the internet, and this can boost their happiness and will often give you a -1 if they don't have any internet connection. So it's good to get in, and it does create a little bit of noise pollution, but you can put this tucked away in the corner, maybe in your office district, and it's not going to affect those that are in low density or medium density housing. So I've got a little gap at the side here where I've decided to put mine. I feel like this is a good fit. It's not too close to many houses. Those in the commercial buildings won't be too bothered either. So there you go, that's our build finished. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned some useful things from watching what I've learned in my first 50 hours of playing the game, and hopefully these cinematics will show you how pretty it looks now it's all finished. And don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and found it useful, or maybe even just giving you some inspiration, and smash that subscribe button to follow me so I can keep producing content like this to help you guys out. Take care, see you in the next one.